Thursday, April 1st, 1943. Dear Kitty, I'm really not April fooling, see the date, but the opposite. Today I can easily quote the saying, misfortunes never come singly. To begin with, Mr. Koophuis, the one who always cheers us up, has had hemorrhage of the stomach and has got to stay in bed for at least 3 weeks. Secondly, Elli has flu. Thirdly, Mr. Vossen is going to the hospital next week. He has probably got an abdominal ulcer. And fourthly, some important business conferences, the main points of which Daddy had discussed in detail with Mr. Koophuis, were due to be held, but now there isn't time to explain everything thoroughly to Mr. Crawler. The gentleman who had been expected duly arrived. Even before they came, Daddy was trembling with anxiety as to how the talks would go. If only I could be there, if only I was downstairs, he cried. Why don't you go and lie with one ear PRGSSED against the floor, then you'll be able to hear everything. Daddy's face cleared, and at 10:30 yesterday morning Margot and Pim, 2 ears are better than 1, took up their positions on the floor. The talks were not finished in the morning, but by the afternoon Daddy was not in a fit state to continue the listening campaign. He was half paralyzed from remaining in so unusual and uncomfortable a position. I took his place at 2:30, as soon as we heard voices in the passage. Margot kept me company. The talk at times was so long-winded and boring that quite suddenly I fell asleep on the cold, hard linoleum floor. Margot did not dare to touch me for fear they might hear us, and talking was out of the question. I slept for a good half hour, and then woke up with a shock, having forgotten every word of the important discussions. Luckily, Margot had paid more attention. Yours, Anne. Friday, April 2nd, 1943. Dear Kitty, oh dear, I've got another terrible black mark against my name. I was lying in bed yesterday evening waiting for Daddy to come and say my prayers with me and wish me good night when Mummy came into my room, sat on my bed, and asked very nicely, and, Daddy can't come yet, shall I say your prayers with you tonight? No, Mummy, I answered. Mummy got up, paused by my bed for a moment, and walked slowly towards the door. Suddenly she turned around, and with a distorted look on her face said, "One don't want to be cross. Love cannot be forced." There were tears in her eyes as she left the room. I lay still in bed, feeling at once that I had been horrible to push her away so rudely. But I knew too that I couldn't have answered differently. It simply wouldn't work. I felt sorry for Mummy. Very, very sorry, because I had seen for the first time in my life that she minds my coldness. I saw the look of sorrow on her face when she spoke of love not being forced. It is hard to speak the truth, and yet it is the truth. She herself has pushed me away. Her tactless remarks and her crude jokes, which I don't find at all funny, have now made me insensitive to any love from her side. Just as I shrank at her hard words, so did her heart when she realized that the love between us was gone. She cried half the night and hardly slept at all. Daddy doesn't look at me, and if he does for a second, then I read in his eyes the words, "How can you be so unkind? How can you bring yourself to cause your mother such sorrow?" They expect me to apologize, but this is something I can't apologize for because I spoke the truth and Mummy will have to know it sooner or later anyway. I seem, and indeed am, indifferent both to Mummy's tears and Daddy's looks, because for the first time they are both aware of something which I have always felt. I can only feel sorry for Mummy, who has now had to discover that I have adopted her own attitude. For myself, I remain silent and aloof, and I shall not shrink from the truth any longer, because the longer it is put off, the more difficult it will be for them when they do hear it. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, April 27th, 1943. Dear Kitty, such quarrels that the whole house thunders. Mummy and I, the Van Dons and Daddy, Mummy and Mrs. Van Don, everyone is angry with everyone else. Nice atmosphere, isn't it? Anne's usual list of failings has been brought out again and fully ventilated. Mr. Vossen is already in the Binnengaswas hospital. Mr. Koophuis is up again, the hemorrhage having stopped sooner than usual. He told us that the registrar's office received additional damage from the fire service who, instead of just quenching the flames, soaked the whole place with water. I'm glad. The Carlton Hotel is smashed to bits. Two British planes loaded with incendiary bombs fell right on top of the Officersturm, German officers' club. The whole Vigilstrat single corner is burned down. The air raids on German towns are growing in strength every day. We don't have a single quiet night. I've got dark rings under my eyes from lack of sleep. Our food is miserable. Dry bread and coffee substitute for breakfast. Dinner: spinach or lettuce for a fortnight on end. Potatoes 20 centimeters long and tasting sweet and rotten. Whoever wants to follow a slimming course should stay in this secret annex. They complain bitterly upstairs, but we don't regard it as such a tragedy. All the men who fought in 1940 or were mobilized have been called up to work for Der Führer as prisoners of war. Suppose they're doing that as a precaution against invasion. Yours, Anne.